Evil is real, and it must be opposed.
The universe is a battlefield between the gods of good and evil, and every person on Earth must take sides.
Few people realize that Aleister Crowley is not only the father of modern Satanism, but the father of modern culture as well. Crowley, whose house overlooked Loch Ness and was bought by guitarist Jimmy Page, has for good reason also been called the other Loch Ness Monster. Crowley, who in his book Magic had admitted to sacrificing hundreds of children to Satan, was run out of Italy and called by the press of his day the wickedest man on earth.
Middle and high school students will soon have a new lesson: the contributions of LGBT and disabled individuals in history. Advocates of the law say it'll create a culture of acceptance.
Having this LGBT curriculum law, and including also talking about people with disabilities, is so vitally important to make sure that we have full representation, that our students can see people from all walks of life.
New Jersey has now become the second state in the nation to pass a law requiring schools to teach LGBT history in the classrooms. Under the new measure, public schools must include lessons about the political, economic, and social contributions of the LGBT community. The new law goes into effect at the start of the 2020 school year. Governor Murphy called the law a step toward inclusion and fairness.
We thank thee for thy adjuration.
I just wanted to become stronger, because that can also help me in other sports that I want to do.
Well, girls can now officially join what was once the Boy Scouts. As of today, girls between the ages of 11 and 17 will be permitted to become what is part of the Scouts BSA. The Boy Scouts of America also says it will recognize its first class of female Eagle Scouts in 2020. More than 77,000 girls have already joined Cub Scouts, a program for younger children, since it began welcoming girls last year.
I require the solace of the shadows and the dark of the night. Sunshine is my destroyer.
And if you haven't heard the name Desmond Napolis, get ready for this trailblazing 11-year-old drag kid who RuPaul is calling the future. His bravery is inspiring so many. We're going to talk to him in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at his amazing story.
I am Desmond, I'm 11 years old, and I like pizza, trains, and drinking root beer since it's caffeine-free. I also do drag, and I love to put on makeup, dresses, and wigs, and of course, jewelry is necessary.
Anybody can do drag. Drag is for anybody and everybody who wants to put on a fun costume and get up on stage and entertain people. Everybody should try drag at least once.
I think I can see your beard.
You can see my beard? Oh no!
Queer kid stuff.
Welcome to the first episode of our 4-part series breaking down the letters LGBT.
Crowley claimed that a demonic spirit he later identified as Satan himself dictated a book to him in 1904 called the Book of the Law. Aleister Crowley has been called the unsung hero of the 1960s and the father of the New Age movement. Time magazine, on their front page article on the New Age movement, declares that they don't know where the term came from or where the movement is going. In Crowley's book, The Book of the Law, the spirit of Satan who channeled through him wrote of the coming of the new eon, a transliteration of the Greek word ionis for age. The book declares how this new eon of Horus will develop, how the child will grow up. These are for us to determine, growing up ourselves in the way of the law of Thelema under the enlightened guidance of the Master Therion. And just who is a Master Therion that is to guide the new age? At the end of the book, we discover that Therion equals 666, the number of the Antichrist, the one whom the Bible calls the man of lawlessness, the man of sin, who is to reign during the last period of history, in the tribulation period. Crowley taught that in order for the new eon of Antichrist to be established, he had to initiate the world into homosexuality. Crowley began by implementing many of his homosexual sex magic rituals into his secret order called the OTO. The musical group White Stains named themselves after erotic homosexual poetry written by Aleister Crowley, which Crowley grossly entitled White Stains.
If they keep with us, then maybe we're gonna have to start throwing bombs to make them stop.
We're young, we're queer, we're gonna rule the world. We're young, we're queer, we're gonna rule the world.
You're about to see startling evidence that Crowley had as much influence on the world with his sex revolution as he did with the drug revolution. Aleister Crowley knew that if he was to establish a new age of Antichrist, he would have to destroy God's design for family, consisting of men and women as husband and wife. Crowley therefore declared in his book Magic Without Tears that family was public enemy number one. Crowley, who was out to destroy the family, said this, quote, "Think what horrid images it evokes from the mind. Not only Victorian, wherever the family has been strong, it has always been an engine of tyranny. Curse them. They are always in the way. To the performance of this work, speaking of the New Age, the nearest obstacle and the most obvious is the family. Since the satanic revolution of the 1960s, there's been an incredible attack on the family as homosexual recruiting has increased dramatically. Crowley made it no secret that he was interested in popularizing homosexual deviancy and even child molestation. Crowley declared, "Let me seduce the boys of England. I shall fight openly for that which no living Englishman dare defend, even in secret, sodomy. And in truth, there seems no better way to avoid a contamination of women. Sodomy is an aristocratic virtue which our middle class had better imitate if they wish to be smart." Crowley's emphasis on homosexuality found their way into mainstream politics, initially through homosexual organizer Harry Hay. This is highly significant because Harry Hay, who led the charge of the sodomy revolution in the 60s, was, like Leary, a disciple of Aleister Crowley's teachings. In fact, the Harry Hay biography you see before you declares, quote, "Harry played the organ for the Los Angeles Lodge, or OTO, Aleister Crowley's notorious anti-Christian spiritual group, a secret society known to have created homosexual sex magic rituals." This is so significant because Hay is considered, quote, "the founder of the modern gay movement." In fact, Harry Hay's book, Radically Gay, states, quote, Hay refers to gay men's sexuality as, quote, "our gateway to spirit." Beginning in 1991, he has held yearly sex magic workshops to explore these potentials with other gay men. This book is declared to be, quote, "gay liberation" in the words of its founder. In fact, on page 241 of his book, Radically Gay, Hay quotes Satanist Aleister Crowley's book, The Book of the Law. He states, quote, "Come forth, O children, under the stars, and take your fill of love." Crowley's teaching of sexual perversion also included sadomasochism and all kinds of sexual deviancy, including copulation with a goat, which ended in slitting the goat's throat and then drinking its blood.
Anything that you can find in a hardware store, we know how to play with real well.
I am into heavy play with whips, props. I like electricity.
Often seen marching in homosexual parades is a sexually deviant group, NAMBLA, some of whose members are associated with the teachings of Aleister Crowley. Like Crowley, NAMBLA emphasized homosexual sex, including sex with little boys. NAMBLA actually stands for North American Man-Boy Love Association. Sadly, many homosexuals are preying on the little children. In fact, nearly 60% of homosexuals claim that they were molested by another homosexual while they were children. Crowleyite and founder of the modern gay movement, Harry Hay, is seen here marching in the parade wearing a sign promoting the North American Man-Boy Love Association. Homosexual Michael Swift wrote in the Gay Community News, quote, "We shall sodomize your sons, emblems of your feeble masculinity. We shall seduce them in your schools, in your dormitories, in your gymnasiums, in your locker rooms, in your sports arenas, in your seminaries, in your youth groups."
We're gay, we're in the PTA. We're here, we're gay, we're in the PTA.
Homosexuals have made incredible inroads into the public school systems, even though they themselves cannot have children with their same-sex partners. Incredibly, along with Harry Hay, the world's most renowned sex researcher, Alfred Kinsey, was also influenced by the works of Satanist Aleister Crowley. In fact, Kinsey made a pilgrimage to Crowley's satanic temple, the Abbey of Thelema, with Satanist Kenneth Anger shortly before his death. Bill Landis wrote in his book on Satanist Kenneth Anger, quote, "There was one man that passionately united Mom, Kinsey, and Anger, Aleister Crowley. Kinsey was obsessed with the great beast, day-to-day sex diaries. He speaks of Kinsey's variation on Crowley's Do What Thou Wilt and states that Kinsey especially admired two homosexual works, the infamous White Stains and the Scented Garden. Kinsey's flawed and biased research in the 1950s set the stage for what Harry Hay would do in the 1960s. Kinsey, who has been dubbed the Columbus of sex, interviewed 5,000 men to arrive at his erroneous conclusions that 10% of the population was homosexual. Kinsey had dishonestly rigged the test samples, as 1,400 of the males interviewed were, quote, convicted sex offenders in prisons scattered over a dozen states, as one of Kinsey's own researchers later admitted. These contact persons who were responsible for collecting volunteers were described as, quote, male prostitutes, female prostitutes, bootleggers, gamblers, pimps, prison inmates, thieves, and hold-up men. Kinsey relied on deviant volunteers to participate in his sex experiments and interviews. Children aged 2 months to 15 years were sexually stimulated by a group of sex offenders. His findings erroneously indicated, quote, that premarital sex was actually beneficial for women and that children, even infants, were sexual beings who could and in fact should have pleasurable sex with adults. Satanist Aleister Crowley would have been proud. Ironically, it was the Crowleyan influence, Alfred Kinsey and Harry Hay, who conditioned the world to receive the sexual revolution of the 60s. Playboy magazine probably did more than any other publication in the 1960s to popularize the sexual revolution. In fact, Hugh Hefner credited Kinsey and his flawed research in his first issue of Playboy. Incredibly, Robert Anton Wilson, who edited the Playboy forum throughout much of the hippie movement, has admitted to practicing Crowley's magic and reading all of his available works. In the 1960s, homosexual youth was rallied to take to the streets. In the early 1960s, homosexual activity was illegal in every state. Subsequent to Crowley's sexual revolution of the 60s, there is legislation now being pushed to silence those who would even speak out against this perversion. Not coincidentally, the founder of the modern homosexual movement, Crowleyan Satanist Harry Hay, was dubbed the oldest hippie of the 1960s. Harry Hay, who was also a music teacher, knew how to influence and subvert the youth through music. Hay said that this language, speaking of music, had the power to communicate ideas, plans, and issues through the form of songs and dances under the noses of the authorities as a weapon. Music always had the power to inspire revolt and revolution. Hay declared to 2/3 of the world today, music is a language, a method of communicating, organizing, educating, mobilizing.